Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Fandom Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and my guest tonight is Lynn Zubernis. Lynn has written a ton of books about Supernatural, and we've talked about a couple of them, but tonight we're going to talk about Family Don't End with Blood and Supernatural fan phenomenon. Lynn, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Glad to be back.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you back. We always have a good time talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
So, Family Don't End with Blood. Obviously, we recognize where the quote came from, and it has an absolutely gorgeous cover, by the way.
Isn't it? It's so beautiful.
It is. And yet, while it's written by cast and crew and fans, chapters written by all of those folks, has a definitely different feel than the more recent book, There'll Be Peace When You Are Done. Can you talk a little bit about how Family Don't End with Blood came to be, and just the process, because I'm fascinated by any process that gets the actors from a hit show to write chapters that are so incredibly candid.
Yeah, I know. It's a really unusual thing. And it's interesting because There'll Be Peace When You Are Done and Family Don't End with Blood. On the surface, you would think, well, they're very much the same. They're both books about Supernatural, written by both the actors and the fans. But in truth, they're pretty different books. And the process for putting them together was, from my perspective as the editor, was really, really different. So Family Don't End with Blood was originally going to be just a book of fan stories. I had heard over the years, over the 10 years that I'd been writing books on the show, I had heard from so many fans who contacted me to say, I love your books helped me in some way. And then spontaneously they would say, you shared your story, especially in Fangasm. Can I tell you my Supernatural story? And I started hearing all these just unbelievably powerful stories from fans about how the show and the cast and the other fans had really changed their lives, and in some cases, like literally saved their lives. And I thought, this is what makes this show so extraordinary. I need to put this in a book so that everyone for posterity will understand why this show is so unprecedented and was so powerful. So that was what it was going to be. And then one day, no lie, I was chatting with Jared Padalecki. I think I probably was asking him to sign a copy of one of my other books to give away for charity. And he sort of put it down and said, hey, are you working on another book? Are you going to do another book? And I said, oh yeah, actually I have this idea, and I told him I'd heard all these stories. I want to put this book together. Show has changed people's lives. And he sort of like sat there for a minute, just sort of like, he's very thoughtful. He's very contemplative sometimes. He just sort of thought for a minute. And then he said, I have a story. And sort of internally, I'm going, I don't know what that means. I'm sure you do have a story, but what does that mean? And then finally it kind of dawned on me, and I said, are you saying that you'd like to tell your story in the book too? And he was like, I think I am. So that's how it became a very different book. And after he said that, I thought, well, maybe some of the other actors also have a story they would like to share. I never would have thought of that. Who thinks to ask the actors of a hit television show, hey, do you want to put a chapter in my little book? Like, nobody would think that. But every single person that I asked was like, yeah, I do have a story and I do want to share it. So it came about very organically in a way.
Well, and you got, in addition to Jared, you got Jensen and Misha and Richard and Rob. And who else am I missing of the cast? Because you got a lot of folks.
there's a ton of them. Mark Shepard, Kim Rose, Brianna Buckmaster, Ruth Connell, Osric Chow, Gil McKinney. I'm
Alicia,
probably
don't
Jim
remember.
Beaver. Yeah, there's 13 of them, I think. I don't know if I got to 13 yet, but what happened was they are mostly the people who I knew really well. Like those were the actors who were going to a lot of conventions. So it was fairly easy for me to just say to them when I saw them or text them or email them and just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you want to write something? Like no pressure, but if you want to, feel free. And so it was very easy and everyone wanted to my absolute shock. I really thought some people were going to be like, no, that sounds like a lot of work. I'm not a writer. But I think they all felt so strongly that they wanted to kind of give back to the fandom, and they wanted to tell the fandom how much of a difference the fans had made in their lives. They're all like such good, just basically good people. And they wanted to do this thing, which was scary for them and hard for them, but they wanted to do it because they felt it was important to let the fans know how much it meant to them, what had been done for them.
And that is just so fundamentally special with the relationship between the fans and the cast with Supernatural, because, you know, I've been to a lot of Comic-Cons, I've been to a lot of conventions, and I've seen a lot of guest stars and media folks be up there, and it's not that they're ungrateful for their success or that they don't care about the fans, but there isn't that connection. And, you know, for them, it's just a gig. And I'm always amazed when I think about how much time the Supernatural folks spend doing conventions on top of living apart from their families in Vancouver all these years. And now there are 12 or 13 or 14 more weekends when, if they're with their family, it's in a hotel room on the road. And that's really amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And then on top of all that, to decide they're going to take some of that little bit of free time to write an original chapter in a book, which took them all a long time because, you know, they're not writers, and writing is a hard thing. And when you're writing something that's really personal, like they were, that's even harder. So it took them a long time. I mean, it took Jared literally 2 years, 2 calendar years to write his chapter, not because he wasn't working on it, but because he worked so hard on it and he wanted it to be exactly what he really wanted to convey. And that takes a long time. So, you know, it's one thing for them to come to conventions. That's a job. They also love it, but it's part of their job. This isn't part of their job. This is just something they really wanted to do. And I think that is really extraordinary.
I think the other thing that blew me away about Family Don't End with Blood, and it's the same thing that floored me the first time I went to a Supernatural convention, was the candor of the actors in a business where most people put up very high, thick walls to protect themselves and to always look perfect.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the conventions, I've heard them say such normal things, such vulnerable things that aren't somebody fronting for the cameras. And in the book, certainly, you know, you've got Rob talking about his stroke, and Jared's chapter about almost not making it home was just mind-blowing. And then all of them just brought so much of themselves to it. That blows me away, because that's not a business that encourages that from people.
No, and in fact, I give them a lot of credit for their courage in doing that, because this was not something that they said, oh, let me check with my manager, let me check with my PR person, let me have my PR people read it over. This was not that. This was them saying, I want to do this, and I want it to be my words, my thoughts, my feelings, even if those are something that doesn't paint me sort of in that ultra positive persona light that we're used to celebrities having. And I think that's That's incredibly courageous. I mean, anybody who writes something autobiographical is incredibly courageous. I think the fans who wrote chapters were incredibly courageous too. And that includes you, and There'll Be Peace When You Are Done. Whenever you're writing about yourself, it's not like writing fiction about somebody else. Writing about yourself takes a tremendous amount of courage, but there's a whole other layer added on there when you're an actor or a celebrity, because people are going to judge you in a very different way than they judge. You know, I write an autobiographical chapter, or Fangasm is a whole autobiography, but who am I? So it's not going to be the same kind of judgment. Celebrities, you know, they're constantly being judged. So it was a really scary thing. There were multiple times with almost every single one of the actor chapters in Family Don't End with Blood, there was some point where someone sent me a chapter and I responded with, are you sure you want to be like this candid? Because I felt a little protective of them because I was aware of the, you know, the whole celebrity persona thing. But to a person, I mean, and there were a few things that we changed and edited or that didn't come through in a way that was what I thought they were trying to say, which, you know, is an editor's job. But for the most part, there was never a time when somebody was like, yeah, you're right, I don't want to be that candid. That was never it. That was never the reason for an edit. And I just think that's extraordinary. But it's what gives the book so much emotion, because when you read those chapters, you're like, oh, holy crap, like this is the real Rob Benedict. This is the real Jim Beaver. This is the real Jensen Ackles. So yeah.
It's just a terrific book, and so many people have said how much it's meant to them. Did you foresee any of that when you started to put it together, how much that book would really mean to people, and how many people would say it changed their lives? The book, not just the show.
Yeah, I know. I mean, not really. I mean, when I started writing books about this show, my goal was to kind of provide validation for other fans. That's what I started out wanting to do. But honestly, I didn't even think that would happen. So I was dumbfounded the very first time somebody read Fandom at the Crossroads, which is the academic book that we put out first. The very first time somebody came up to me at a convention and said, I read your book and it felt so good and it validated me and it really made a difference to me. I was like, what? So whenever that happens, I'm dumbfounded. But putting together Family Don't End with Blood, I knew that even if it had been just fan stories, I knew there was going to be that validation. What I didn't expect was how powerful it would be for people to hear that the celebrities who they look up to and who they identify with, to hear those people talk about their anxiety and their depression and their suicidality and their strokes and their, you know, debilitating anxiety and their fear of performing on stage or whatever it was that they were being so open about. That has an even greater impact in potentially than hearing it from your peers, hearing it from people who you look up to. So I don't think I really realized how powerful that would be to have the actors chapters. And of course, I didn't expect initially the actors chapters to be what they were. It's not like I said to anyone, okay, well, you can contribute, but only if you're going to write your heart out and like lay it bare. Like I did not say that to people. That's literally what they all wanted to do. So they did it without instruction. And that's why it's made such a difference. I mean, I'm a psychologist, so my job is helping people and trying to be therapeutic, and I know how powerful it is to change somebody's lives through that. The first time somebody told me an unbelievably powerful story about having Family Don't End with Blood and becoming very suicidal, and they said something like, I had the razor in one hand and the book in the other, and I put down the razor and picked up the book, and I'm still here. And I think I just lost it like on the spot, because wow, like that's very impactful. And it's due to the people who wrote such powerful chapters.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that really came through to me in reading the book was that lack of pretense, that these were people being people aside from their fame or their position or their celebrity. And that made what they were dealing with very relatable, because whether it was somebody talking about anxiety as another sufferer of anxiety, not as a, well, I've got it all sewn up because I'm up here on stage, but I don't know, it almost had a, odd to say, almost had a support group vibe to it, where, all right, let's all share our stories here. And in hearing someone else's story, you kind of see your own in a little different way.
Yeah.
I was also really taken by the stories that the celebrities told, that they really did connect with each other that much outside of filming.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something that you also don't realize, because that's also an unusual thing. Supernatural is so different in so many ways, because other shows don't have people essentially going on the road together as like this traveling band of entertainers every other weekend, and, you know, going all across this country, going to other countries, like international travel. That's a bonding experience. So, and also most shows don't go on for 15 years. So the people who've really been, especially the authors of Family Don't End with Blood, because they are a lot of the people who have done the conventions all the time, they are just unbelievably close. And I love kind of the reciprocity of that, because the actors have their support group and we, the fans, have our support group, and one has really mirrored the other. And it's been one of the really extraordinary things about this SPN family. And it does really come through in the book. Yeah.
Well, I remember with Rob's chapter about his stroke, and, you know, how Jensen kind of took charge and helped him out, and how they didn't leave him by himself. And here he was in a different city in a hospital all of a sudden. And that really resonated with me. Again, seeing these actors that we put on a pedestal and see a distance with, just being people.
Yeah, and sort of the willing, like how much they consider each other family. Like they didn't get on their flights and go back to work and go where they're going to go. They stayed with their friend. They acted, his wife couldn't be there. They acted as his family. They helped, you know, they literally saved his life. It was, if Richard hadn't heard him on the phone and known him so well, that when he heard him trying to speak, he was like, something's wrong. And then they described it to Misha, and Misha was like, yeah, I think it might be a stroke. And so, I mean, they literally saved his life. When does that happen with the cast of a television show? It's very extraordinary. And Rob, because he is such an incredible writer, I mean, we all know he's an incredible songwriter, but apparently that talent for songwriting just translates straight into writing a chapter, because I felt like when I was reading his chapter that I was like watching it moment by moment in a film. He's so good at describing and taking you through minute by minute what was happening with all the emotions he's feeling, that it was just incredibly powerful.
And I felt the same way, especially with Jared's chapter, because that was just, you knew he came out okay, because obviously he was writing the chapter, but wow, in the middle of it, you were really there with him, and it was touch and go. It was scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, like what courage he could have glossed over that. He could have done it like just in narrative form in the past tense, but instead he takes you right into his head in those moments when he wasn't sure he could keep going. And yeah, your heart's kind of in your mouth, even though you know, well, it must have a happy ending because he's writing it and he's still here. But boy, he let you really see just how dark it was in his world at those moments. So another incredible writer. Like that's the other thing. Once I did say, oh yeah, Jared, great idea. And then I asked other actors, I did have a moment of thinking, oh God, what have I signed up for here? Like, what am I going to do if I get chapters from these people who are actors on the show I love, you know, who I look up to? what am I going to do if they send me absolute shit? And then I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Collins. Like, this is like, what a horror. I don't want to be in that position. So I was so incredibly nervous until I got everybody's first draft. And then I was like, oh my God, like, these are amazing chapters. What a great idea this was. But there was a while in there where I was like,
Well, and we often, now we all know Jensen is a triple or a quadruple threat because he can sing, he can dance, he can act, he can direct. What can't the man do?
I don't know.
We haven't found that out yet.
No.
But in general, you don't usually think of celebrities as being writers. You know, if they do bring out a book, it's often amisghwritten, and we all just go, well, yeah, that's not what they do. They act, they don't write. So yes, okay, Misha had a background in PR, so we could bet he could write. But,
well, I knew that Misha could write because Misha wrote a chapter for the book before Family Don't End with Blood in Fan Phenomena Supernatural, and it's so Misha. It's like, it's candid, it's funny, it's snarky, but it's also heartfelt. So I knew Misha could write. That I wasn't so worried about, and I knew Jim Beaver could write. So I wasn't worried about the two of them. And I also knew Kim Rhodes could write. Like, she went to Penn. Yeah. But other people, even though, you know, people can be very articulate and very smart and still not be able to write. So while I knew the rest of them were smart and were articulate on stage and were great actors, who knew?
well, I'm surrounded by people who write books for a living, who still have editors who send the manuscripts back and go, I think you need to rethink this.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I feel extremely lucky because while they are lightly edited, I only wanted them to be lightly edited. The whole point was to let the writer's voice come through. I don't want it to be my voice. So it was a real miracle that they submitted them in such good shape that was an easy thing to do.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. You talked about them being on the road together, and in a normal year, I do about 14 to 16 conventions.
Me too.
So I definitely get the shared misery of road trips that don't go the way you think they're going to go. And we always joke that we'd love to see more of Sam and Dean's in between moments, like at the laundromat, where this is just them in between cases doing normal stuff, but them doing the normal stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes we've gotten some of those con stories about each other where I forget who it was who went to pick Jared up for dinner, and Jared comes to the door in a towel and says, man, I can't leave yet. I broke the closet door. And
Yeah.
most of fandom stopped with the Jared in a towel. But the idea that it was one of those stupid accordion doors that you can't open without pulling off the track and somehow broken the door.
Yeah, they've shared a lot of pretty, and that was part of the fun of Kings of Con. You know, even that was a fictionalized version, but they used a lot of crazy behind the scenes things that have happened in their adventures together at cons and traveling, and sort of incorporated them in Kings of Con. So I thought that made that really funny.
Yeah, and I can definitely appreciate and identify with that, because just with the group of us that usually caravan, there are all these in-jokes and these stories and the, yeah, never eat the barbecue in West Virginia again kind of cautionary tales.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I've got lots of them too. And I really, you know, I understand how much they miss each other, because I so miss my convention buddies, you know? I miss the other vendors who I see like at least once a month or twice a month. I miss the other fans who are there, who are covering the conventions. It's you know, it's tough. And I think they're feeling the same way. Jensen's post last week about missing Comic-Con just struck me so personally, because I miss Comic-Con. I miss the people I go there with every year. I miss doing the press rooms. I miss all the absolute insanity that makes me exhausted and I can't even move for a week after, but I love it. So it's another one of those reciprocal things, I think.
Yeah, this is the first time in 13, 14 years I won't be at Dragon Con.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with myself on Labor Day weekend if I'm not squished against 90,000 other people in Habitrails over Peachtree Street. I mean,
yeah,
just like us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's funny the things that you miss that you often, when you're in them, you're like, this is the worst thing ever. But then as soon as you don't have them, you're like, oh my God, I miss that so much. And I think, you know, the actors who are doing the conventions a lot, who are a lot of the people who wrote In Family Don't End with Blood, they're missing it. They're missing that too, just like we are.
There was so much reciprocal energy in the conventions that I've been to, where I expected them to feed off of us, you know, as a performer does with the energy in the room. And I expected us, you know, to be excited for them. But the give and take and the mutuality of it was something that was really outstanding. And I think that comes through very clearly in Family Don't End with Blood, is that it's a two-way street in a sense that's very unusual.
Yeah. I mean, some of them explicitly talk about that. Kim Rhodes, Brianna Buckmaster, Ruth Connell, Gil McKinney, Osric Chow, like all of them really talk about what a difference that relationship with the fans has made to them, how much that sort of gave them the courage to step outside their comfort zone and do things that they'd been nervous about doing. I mean, it made real change in their lives, which is pretty extraordinary. And I also think, you know, because they have gotten to know the fans so well, and I've said this before, I probably said it when we were talking about There'll Be Peace When You Are Done, but it is such a unique thing. When you see fans so often, you can't like hang on to stereotypes or negative stereotypes about them. So I think when I asked them all, do you want to write a chapter in a book sort of for the fans, there was no sense in them of, oh, I don't really trust fans. I don't know how, you know, are fans really going to want to hear this, or how is it going to be received? Am I going to be attacked? I think they trusted that the fans would want to hear their reality and would be empathic and would be understanding. And I think that's because there is more reciprocity than usual.
Yeah, and you know, going back to what you said about how the conventions have changed their lives, Jensen singing, you know, going from that first tentative, you're not supposed to be here, to rocking out like a badass. And watching Kim and Brianna kind of come out of their shells and come into their own and just really claim themselves. And watching Jeffrey Asmodeus drumming on stage.
Oh yeah.
And daring to be that in front of us, that's a tremendous gift right there, that they're not just spewing the PR points or that they're not sticking to the script. They're really coming and talking about them and what they're doing and how it is. And that's such a gift.
Yeah. And I mean, it really comes from knowing you can't really, it's hard to trust someone when you haven't had interactions with them. Mm. So it has really changed things for them, having so many interactions with so many fans. And I think too, you know, I was very lucky to have started covering these conventions a long time ago and to started writing in 2007. So by the time I approached them to write this book, like they'd known me for 8 years. I wasn't a stranger. So I think also they had some amount of trust that, okay, I know she won't steer me wrong. I know she won't let me put something in a book that's going to come back and bite me in the ass. So I think there was at least a little bit of trust there too, which, you know, I don't think I could walk up to the cast of a show that I'd never met and be like, hey, I'm Lynn, want to write a book for me? And that really, why would they trust me? But these cast I knew by that time.
Mm-hmm. So now fan phenomenon came first. And where were you coming from when that book came together, and what did you want it to be? Because each of these books is so different, even though from the outside you might say, oh, more reactions from the cast and crew. Well, what are they going to say that they didn't already say? But they're all different.
Yeah, no, they're all very different. So Fan Phenomena Supernatural came about in a weird way. We did the first two books, which were Fandom at the Crossroads, which is the more academic book, and then Fangasm, which is really like our fandom autobiography, our wild and crazy adventures in fandom. So those two were as different as could possibly be. And then Kathy and I, because we did those two together, we're both professors. We were at a Popular Culture Association conference, and Kathy was doing the Journal of Popular Culture. She was the area chair for fandom. I was the area chair for Southwest Popular Culture Association. And we were talking to one of the presses, Intellect Press, who was starting a series called the Fan Phenomena series. And it was going to be a book for each show or book or film or whatever that was a true fan phenomenon. And we were just talking to them about that because they published the Journal of Fandom Studies. And I said to them, well, you should have one for Supernatural. And they were like, we don't really know much about Supernatural. And also, no, these have to be like bona fide phenomena. And I was like, yeah, well, it is. And they said, no, it's still on the air. And I was like, I'm telling you, it is a fan phenomenon. And I think I bullied them into including Supernatural. They don't regret it now, but I really think I just wouldn't let up. I was like, it is a phenomenon. It belongs in the series. I want to do it. Kathy and I will put it together. We will do it for you. And so they finally agreed. And the nice thing about that series is that almost all of the books have a combination of perspectives. So they have some articles written by academics. So there's some articles in some chapters in that book that are very academic, but then they also allow, a couple articles from fans, from crew, from cast members. So we asked Misha Collins and Richard Spate Jr. to write chapters because they were people who I'd been talking to a lot about fandom. The first time we met Misha, we talked to him for so long that the publicist finally called him and was like, where the hell are you? You've missed your next interview completely, because we had just gotten so carried away, and I had enjoyed my talks with him so much that I knew that he could write something of a caliber that would be in this kind of a book. And same with Richard. From the first time we met him, we did an interview, and then he said, I want to keep talking. Can you come back and we'll go to dinner? So at the end of the day, we came back and we went to dinner and we just kept on talking. So I knew they would really fit in that. So that's how that one came about.
And I think it's funny, you had just tweeted today about, I think it was a BuzzFeed article that was so many shows that never got the credit that they should have gotten. And Supernatural always makes the should have gotten more credit.
Yeah.
Because I don't know whether it's because it wasn't a teeny bopper show. It really never has been, even when the boys were, in their 20s. It wasn't really a teeny bopper show.
No.
I don't know what it is, but for the quality of acting and the quality of storytelling, it's just never gotten, I don't think, the dues that it should have.
No, I don't think so either. And I think part of it is because genre television in general has really, until very recently, like today, genre television has really kind of been ignored. And then the Emmy nominations came out today, and there's all kinds of genre television. It's like the world has woken up and been like, oh, look, genre television can be really good. And all I could think of was, this realization comes too late for Supernatural. This is not fair. I love the nominations and I love some of the shows that are nominated, but too little too late for Supernatural. And I think it really deserved so many more nominations than it got. And I feel really good about fighting to include Supernatural in this fan phenomenon series, because it is a phenomenon and it did belong in that series. So I'm glad that I prevailed.
It's kind of like we sort of won that war in movies before we've won it in TV, because when all of the blockbuster multi-billion-dollar movies are fantasy, sci-fi, supernatural superheroes, it's kind of hard to argue that it's a marginalized interest and it's not serious.
Yeah, no.
You
Yeah.
can say it's not serious, but it's making all this money over here.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's ridiculous.
So yeah, I think we're finally getting some recognition about the importance of genre storytelling, which has also lagged in publishing. You know, everybody loves to talk about that very serious, depressing lit fic book that is, you know, winning all the awards. But you know who actually buys all the books? It's the people walking out with romance and mystery and fantasy, and they'll walk out with as large of a stack as they can carry, and they'll yell over their shoulder, see you next week. You know, that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there should be a recognition of quality no matter what the genre is. You know, good acting is good acting, good writing is good writing, good directing is good directing. So yeah,
Well, absolutely. And I think there has been there's been a story sold out there that genre stuff is somehow not grown up. That when you're a real grown up, you only read miserable and depressing things because that shows how grown up you are. And this fun stuff with elves and magic and, you know, oh, that's just not serious enough. Life's short. Do what you enjoy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the old high culture versus pop culture kind of argument that's been going on forever, but it's always been a spurious argument. Like I said, like quality is quality.
And you know, every time I do a rewatch on the show, I am floored at things I didn't see the last time, whether it's a camera angle or a lighting effect or just watching. I was just rewatching one of the episodes, the episode when Sam gets let out of the panic room, and Dean is being so furious in what he says, and all of Jensen's body language is saying the opposite. And I'm looking at this going, wow, that's a really hard thing to do, to make your expressions, all of your nonverbal communication be completely opposed to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And them both spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they are so, I called them nuanced actors, all of them, because they are so good at that. And their acting is so organic, and it's gotten better over the years. I mean, if you go back to the early seasons of Supernatural, sometimes you probably wouldn't be watching and saying, wow, this is the best acting ever. Like, you know, there was definitely a learning curve for them, but boy, did they learn, and boy, did they get good. And, you know, sometimes when I watch other shows, because I've watched Supernatural for so long, that's sort of my expectation. So it really stands out when somebody else is really not doing it as well. And then I'm like, oh, wow, oh, that's right. Supernatural actors are just really, really good.
Well, and I think it's the overall care taken with the whole show. When you start looking for the little details in the set design and in the, just the details that you go, you know, they could have gotten by without doing that. They didn't have to put that in. That took time, that took money, that took effort. Everybody's on a schedule, but they did it. And it adds to that realism where the first time you watch it, it just sinks into your brain as, well, of course, that's it's real. That's how it's supposed to look. And then on the rewatch 2, 3, 100, you look at that and go, that's a created element that lends the effect. And there's just, it's well done on a level that a lot of shows don't bother.
Yeah, I've always kind of been struck by how much everybody working on that show cares. From I remember the very first time that I was on set, just sitting there for the whole day and trying to be very unobtrusive and not get in the way lets you really be an observer. And just, you know, I think I used the term, even for that very first visit, like it's like a well-oiled machine, but it's because everybody is so tuned in and everybody cares. Nobody's trying to phone it in. Nobody's like, let's just do it this way. And the last time that I was on set, which wasn't that long ago, like same. nobody is still phoning it in. Nobody is still not caring. Everyone cares so much about that show and is so passionate about it. Somebody tweeted me, I don't know what it was in response to, but tweeted me earlier today about like the music doesn't get enough recognition. And I was like, you're right, because that's another really good example. I have had fascinating conversations with Jay Gruska and Christopher Leonards, and they care so much about the show, and the original music that they have done for the show, that's also such a big part of it. It's every piece. The VFX people, Adam Williams wrote a chapter in Family Don't End with Blood. And it wasn't really as much about the show as it was about how the love affair that he and Lucy had is started from the show. But it's so interesting and so, I think, unusual to see that everybody who has a hand in the show just cares about it so much. And that shows.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it definitely does. And talking about the music, that's something that I'm calling out as I'm doing that 75 episode rewatch, because you become very aware of the music that is in the episodes that were chosen, and the music that your brain is telling you somehow missed because it was in an episode that didn't get chosen, and kind of looking at, wow, what songs did we miss out on because it didn't get put in the list? And yeah, the choices are just so amazing. And I had not watched season 1 on broadcast or on DVD. I only saw it on Netflix.
Oh.
And season 1 on Netflix didn't have the permission.
Yes. Oh, they changed so much. Oh, and some of the music that they changed were the most iconic scenes. Oh, I tell everybody, never watch season 1 on Netflix. It ruins it.
Yeah. And I didn't really realize how much until this rewatch, and went, wow, that just rips a whole layer out of the show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially those early seasons when they were lucky enough to get permission for some just amazing songs.
Yeah. So what are you up to next, Lynn? Do you have something else coming or up your sleeve?
No, not necessarily. Still really enjoying the response to There'll Be Peace When You Are Done, because
it's only a couple months old.
It's only 2 months old, and it came out for the end of the show, and we haven't had that yet. So I'm really hoping it's going to be helpful to people when the show does go into its final run, which it looks like is going to be happening soon. I do have a couple of ideas of other things that I want to look at when it comes to the show, and there have been a couple of people write me sometimes with suggestions about, oh, it would be really cool if you did this. As a matter of fact, one of them is about supernatural and music, not just the music on the show, but the way music has sort of touched people's lives and pulled people into the SPN family, from the people who play at conventions and then develop a fan base of their own, to the composers for the show, to the people who pick the music that's in it. So, that's something that I'm kind of thinking about. I've got a couple of ideas. I don't think I'm quite ready to give up writing about this show yet, but but nothing written in stone.
Oh, well, Lynn, this has been absolutely fun, as it always is. And, I loved both these books so much, Family Don't End with Blood and Supernatural Fan Phenomenon. Thank you so much for bringing them into the world and for making them happen.
You are welcome. I am very, Family Don't End with Blood has a soft spot in my heart because of the way it came about, and also because at this point, every copy of the book benefits Random Acts and Attitudes in Reverse, which is a suicide prevention organization. So at this point, the book has been out for 3 years. So it has made some significant contributions to those two charities, which I'm really proud of. And There'll Be Peace When You Are Done also benefits Random Acts and SPN survivors. So that's been really gratifying as well.
That is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And we'll be talking again.
Yeah, definitely.
We have more stuff to talk about.
I know.
It's always so much fun.
It is. Thank you.
Well, thank you folks for watching. There'll be more Supernatural here on Continual, so stay tuned. There's lots more to come.